Okay, we got a lot to cover, so I'm going to get going here. My name is Kevin Leach. I'm the Technical Director of Customer Success for PDSVISION, and this is going to be What's New in Creo 11 Part 1. We're going to have a two-part series. This is more of the very fundamental kind of part of what's new, and the next one will be more about the different little features in some of the other modules. So just a quick little corporate overview. PDSVISION at a glance, right? We're headquarters in Stockholm. We operate in 13 countries, 2,500 plus years of combined technical experience, largest partner worldwide, and rapidly growing partner for ANSYS. My PDS is our apps that we put out, and they're all about trying to increase your value for your investment. So let's get right into it, right? So the first part of this, we're just going to talk about some core updates and some suggestions. So on this little left-hand side here, I have some configuration notes. These are some of the new suggestions by PTC as far as your shade quality. Obviously, this really is very dependent on your computers and what's going on and how big your assemblies and what you want it to look like. But basically, they're saying, hey, with what they found, it's time to kind of turn up the quality a little bit and kind of get going. We have some new functionality in a tool called timestamp. So as you're modeling inside of Creo, you can show timestamp on, and down in the bottom, it'll actually show a timestamp of the features as you're creating them. We have a expand by one level new icon, so we can, in our model tree, we can expand a level at a time. I'll show you how that works. You'll see at the bottom in the message window, I've actually expanded my message window to show 3 lines, but you can see it's got a timestamp next to it. They've changed the command setup. So in the past, you would go to your command search, type in a beginning of a command, and at the bottom it would say setup. It's now got a little icon next to it when you hit command search for the setup window directly. And again, I'll show these live in the software. I just kind of want to highlight them a little bit. We've got some new functionality in, again, with that expand one level, you also have collapse one level. I'll show you how to get to that. It's a little bit different. They've done a little work on the name. So in the past, if you tried to rename something the same exact name in the model tree, it would just kind of drop you out of it and you'd have to try to rename it. Now it just says name exists, doesn't drop you out, and allows you to go back and rename it to a different name. If you happen to leave a blank spot, which again would be an illegal name, it will put in the underscore for you automatically. Oh, it keeps doing that, sorry. They've added, or didn't add, but they've modified their icons so that they're a little bit more logical, meaning that there'll be normal face to whatever it's controlling. So like in sheet metal, you have an angled one, and that angle one is going to be normal in this direction, where the up and down is going to be normal in the other direction. And again, I'll show some of that as we go. Some new selection techniques for trace and lasso and box. Just kind of keeping up with some of the other tools there. Not much in Creo 11 for a sketcher, but they did add a locks display. So if you lock 2 items in a sketch, you can show that in a display. I'll show that. You can now project sketch points. So in Creo 11, the project feature is enhanced to project sketch points, allowing you to project multiple points in a single operation. Previously, only a single point could be projected onto a geometric target object. So we'll kind of see how that works. It's just an example of that projection. I added a couple notes from Creo 9 just because a lot of people aren't obviously on 9 or haven't seen 9. They're on maybe 8, thinking about going to 10 or 11. But in 9, they added the auto scale in the first sketch. To me, this is probably one of the biggest improvements in Sketcher from a long time ago, right? So I like to kind of highlight that. And the same thing in 9, also the project and offset tools were changed. So if you're still on 8, thinking about going to 10 or 11, these things will definitely pop up on you. So I wanted to add that. All right, I think one last thing, and then we'll move on here. The in surfacing, they added this rolling ball offset enhancement. So in 10, create complex offsets were made easier when a standard offset would fail. They had a rolling ball. Now you have a little bit more control over it, and you've got a faster regeneration on it. So improved productivity in that case. All right, let's take a look at some of this live. So that's Creo 10. I just wanted to keep that alive. Like one of those things I was talking about is the old setup, right? So this is Creo 10. If you went into the setup, you would see setup down the bottom here. In Creo 11, let's start Creo 11. And 11.0.0.0 is the first release of 11, so it came out in April. We normally suggest most customers kind of wait till at least the first build code comes through, which should be July. So, just to kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Let's start a part. And if we hit the command search, we'll see that it's no longer at the bottom, the setup, right? It is now right on the side here. So as soon as you pick command search, it'll pop up. There's your setup. That's where you would turn on SolidWorks commands. Let me close that. That's where you would turn on SolidWorks commands. If you've never seen that, basically you can go in here and say, hey, what's a loft? And it'll say, hey, a loft in Creo is called a blend, and this is where it's located. So that's nice if you're coming from a different software. I always recommend turning that on. We also have a new functionality to do a command search inside your options, right? So in the past, you didn't have this, but now you could go in here and say, hey, where's map key? And we'll talk about map keys here at the end, but basically it'll kind of show you where those map keys are, where those settings are. Or if I wanted to know where display, one of the displays are, right? So you can go in and kind of search your way through there. And the same thing here, you can turn on, you can use your setup and turn on the way you want your options to come up. While we're looking at that, let's talk a little bit about some of those fundamental changes. So in model display, basically they want you to turn up your shade quality to 8. Entity display, they want you to be tan dimmed. I'll send these out if anybody's interested, but these are just recommendations. These aren't hard, fast rules. Sometimes, that shade thing can really slow down your computer depending on video card and all that kind of stuff. So again, just suggestions. The timestamp that we showed was basically you just come down to your bottom message window here, right click, and you can turn on timestamp. And now when I go to build something, you can see how it's now got a timestamp next to it down the bottom there. Hopefully you guys can all see that. If not, I'll take a quick little screenshot just so you can see it. Wrong one. So basically you can zoom in, you can see that there's the timestamp. And that'll continue as you're modeling and going. While I was there, I should have showed a little bit of the sketcher stuff, so let's do that. Do it again. I tend to build my sketches internal, but I'll do them external just so you see both ways. No big deal. Doesn't matter which way you like to do it. It's more for me especially when I'm talking to people, it's more about explaining that it can be done both ways. So if we go in and the first dimension I want to change, and it's a very simple sketch. So I'm going to do one a little bit more complicated. So we'll do a sketch that in the past, had you done this and started modifying the dimensions, you would have gotten in trouble, meaning it would have imploded or it would have, crossed each other, or it maybe wouldn't do anything. But now if I take that first dimension, now again, before I actually make any other change, take a dimension I want to drive and say, hey, this is going to be, maybe it's going into a plastic model car. It's going to be 1.5 inches, right? Well, scaled all my other dimensions accordingly, and I didn't lose my sketch. Like I said, in the past, prior to Creo 9, this thing would have enveloped or flipped over. So I like to show that no matter what. I know that's not just Creo 11, but it's nice to see. And then the other one is if you're going to do an offset. This one I find, if you've not seen this, can be frustrating a little bit. And it works great. It's just getting used to the new technique, meaning that I say, hey, I want to project, maybe I want to project that edge. I don't know. Let's say we grab that edge. So people will project it, okay, and you can see it used to be a pull down menu, but what'll happen is they won't accept it. So they'll go to do something else and they lose that projection. So you got to remember when you're doing this that if you like it, hit the green check mark. If you want to project another line, you can use this create geometry from another one, and you can create a second one if you wanted to, right? So there's those two lines projected. This same technique works with the offset. So I'm just backing up here a little bit. If I go to offset, we'll see that I pick that first edge. And if I use my shift button and go over the whole surface, I get the surface loop command. And again, that used to be a pull down menu to the right that we would do. So this is, again, not brand new. It's part of Creo 9. I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. You gotta accept it. I can hit the green check mark or I can middle mouse. Either way is accepting it. And then from there again, middle mouse again or green check mark to get out, and I have my offset. The last thing in Sketcher, just to kind of move on here real fairly quick, is that if I let's get rid of those. So I'm gonna delete. Let's do it this way, so I don't lose my references. I lost them anyway. Let's grab those two. If I've got some sketch going on here and I say, hey, that, the new in Creo 11 is that I can lock these. So I can go in here and say, let's make this one and this one locked. And let's make them equal, right? You can see I can turn on that lock display. So that's the new icon for lock display, right? They've added, again, other techniques in 9 and 10 for highlighting junctions and intersections. But that's pretty much it for Sketcher. Let me just do this. The expand one, right? So you used to have expand all, but now you can expand one by one, and you can see how that kind of walked its way down through, and then you can come over here to collapse by level, right? And you can also still do expand all if you want, and collapse all if you want. So just different places for buttons, and the fact that they got a couple new little buttons in there, right? Just to kind of make that a little bit easier. In all of the glyphs have been kind of updated. Like I said, they're going to be normal where it makes sense to be normal. And you can see in that's flat to that surface, that arrow, and then this one's more of a up and down. That's telling me that's the up and down motion, right? Shows up pretty good when you do a sheet metal part as well. So if I do new part sheet metal, and we just build a flat plane. And then I add a flat wall to that. And let's make that a trapezoid or something just so it makes a little bit more sense. And you can see that that glyph is normal to that angle, and then these are normal because they're in this direction, and that one's more normal in that direction. So they've just kind of tried to, make a little bit more sense of those, make it a little bit easier to kind of work with, right? Let's close them out. And let's see what we got going. The projected surface. So again, I'm just gonna go up one here. Set working directory. We're good. All right. So new part. Just to do the project points. Basically, go in and revolve. let's make that 10. Enough. I'll set a datum just somewhere above it. And then I'm going to go and sketch some axes points. It will ignore construction geometry when I go to this project tool. So if we make that construction and we add a point, an axis point, and I'm just throwing a bunch of points on here, it don't really matter where. Right, so they're up in that datum, but now I can project them. So we projected all those points down, and I can use one of them to drive a hole. So we can go in here and say, let's grab that guy. And orientation. And I'm going to make it a drilled hole with a counterbore. Which of course, not much material there, so I'm going to shape here. Let's make this 0.2. There we go. So we got a little flat there, and then I can take that and say pattern, and I can make that an axis pattern. Nope, a sketched point pattern by feature, and then grab the feature, right? So that would be my projected points. And then the last one in this section is just the rolling ball. So if we have an offset surface, and let's see what that one is, preview. So let's grab this guy. So if you're dealing with surfaces at all, you kind of know that at some point when you're offsetting this upward, it's going to fail, right? So at some point you're gonna lose that. And there are some options in there to do, you know, automatic fit and control fit. They've been around forever, but this new rolling ball option uses an initial version of a new method to offset small quilts with high curvature areas. And what's good about this is that I can say, hey, I want to keep that at 0.5. Right? Say okay. It doesn't give me a display, but it will give me the surface when I'm done. And if I went in and kind of checked that, I would have that. So that's new. New and improved, more so than new. I think in 10 you could do an offset with rolling ball. This just gives me a little bit more access. Right? Done. Go back to the slideshow here. All right, so again, I got these backwards. In the last, I don't know how long. So model-based definition is funny for me because I've been talking about model-based definition for 20 plus years. Over the last 3, 4, maybe, yeah, probably 3, 4 years, this has definitely become a bigger and bigger conversation. A lot of things have been changing. There's new government rules about 5,000 dot, I want to say 97, but I could be wrong with that. I wasn't thinking I was even going to say that. But basically, if you try to get into a new contract with the government with a new project, they're asking for all digital control, right? So they're kind of pushing companies to go to model-based definition. And in one of the problems was that you didn't have any kind of tables. So now they've added the ability to add tables. So that was a long way around to explain that. And the tables can be, you know, saved off in a place so you can reuse them over and over. Things like in some unique uses. So this one is a surface finish table that's been dropped on. And basically the purple surfaces are this finish, the yellow are this finish. It was just a way to use a color coding to make surface finish easier to apply. They have a revision table that they've made, but any table can be made. Anything you can think of can be done this way. So there's torque tables, revision tables, there's surface finish tables, a lot of uses. This one's kind of flat to the screen, and this one's flat to a indentation angle, right? So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. And again, model-based definition, huge conversations over the last, mainly over the last year specifically, but the last 2 or 3 years at least. So if you haven't had that conversation with anybody and you want to have that conversation, I don't have time today to really get too deep into it, but absolutely reach out. We'll set up some conversations and explain the reasons why this kind of makes sense. The overall goal of model-based definition is basically you build a start part with a bunch of new things in them, and then be able to have a site map of where things are located. This one's not completed, so I'm not going to bother jumping into them. But you can have a properties page where maybe you got notes for all your properties and all of that stuff. So this one's specifically just showing us a table and combining. If we go up into the annotation tab here, we'll see that we now have tables, and then we can go in and make a table. So if I want to make a table really quick, I can make a table, right? I can add information into it just like we could on a regular drawing note stuff. We can delete rows, we can add, we can add columns, we can do whatever we want to do. So just basically the only thing we can't is there's no repeat regions yet. So that'll be somebody's question, I'm sure, but that's hopefully, I don't know any, I haven't heard anything, but I'm hoping that that's coming down the pike. We can see we have some of these quick tables kind of built in now. You can bring tables from files, right? We can do a lot of that functionality that we could do in the past. I have one more example of this. That's a little bit better. And that's this one's got revisions, and it's got some torque stuff in it. And again, they colored the bolts. And then the bolts, this was a great way to show torque, because torque can, if you had to pick a line to every bolt that's, could be here and then down, it's hard to show all that. Where now you can say, hey, there's a torque stable. And then we could color code it if we wanted to, and then, pull out each one of these individually and kind of work through them, right? We also have a revision table. So if we back out here and go to revision table, you can see I kind of added one here already, but basically you just go in and you add a row, and then you add your text. It's just, click in there. You can format it, size just like anything else. We can go in and say, hey, that's going to be a 4. We can do all of them at the same time if we wanted to. You could do, the whole column if we wanted to change the column. Hey, maybe I want to make that yellow, right? Oh, yellow would be bad color because the background's yellow, so let's not do that. Let's make it brown. There we go. So you can color, you can do a bunch of different things with them, right? So that's brand new. Like I said, in Annotate, the ability to add tables. All right, so the little discussion is about lattice. And this is another one that they've been working on for years, and we can see here that lattices came out in Creo 4. I think was the first version that had any kind of lattice, and then each version has come out, they've done work on lattices. And additive manufacturing is becoming bigger and bigger in a lot of different industries. So we have some customers that are in the medical world doing some medical stuff. We've seen it in some of the some of the other industries with aerospace, things like that. You can use the lattices inside of simulation tools. So this one's Samaric CFD. In 7, they did a little bit of enhancement over here. They added multi-body design with that lattice work, right? So they've been constantly adding to this as they go. In this version, they've added a new technique called connecting lattices. So there you have multi-bodies where you have multiple different bodies with different lattices. Sometimes you want to connect them. And what I mean by that is if we look at the next slide here, So this would be lattice on one body and lattice on another body, and they just kind of jam together inside here, right? And they can't be really crashed together. I've actually separated them. I'll show that in a second. But that is them connected at the end. So it will go through and connect them. Let's show that first, and then I'll go into the assemblies. So this is a multi-body, right? So I have two bodies here. I have a body on the left and a body on the right. We create a lattice on the left side. They got to be simplified. So if we look at that, I basically went in and picked the cell type. You can manipulate the pore size, right? But it's in a simplified version. I got another lattice here on the next one. So a different lattice. Right? If we look at that one, you can see that this one is elongated diag. Yeah, I can't even say it. Won't even try. I'll end up butchering it. And then the connectability is to go in and be able to connect those two. And I'll open that up and show you some of the, it could be more than two. Just you can see it's pretty CPU and computer intensive. Come on. There we go. And we can see how it's combined those inside. If we look, right, so I can have more than one. I can then if I have a third one, I can then pick which is the middle and kind of work from there. I've got control over the densities, right? Create a whole new body from it, whatever I want to do, right? So there's lattice connect. And just like everything, I'm kind of trying to do some quick stuff because again, we're time crunched here a little bit, but ultimately, if you've got more questions on this, we're glad to jump in deeper. Just really trying to cover as much of this stuff as possible. Close it again. A ton of work has been done with that lattice. So if you haven't seen it at all in the last couple versions, stochastic lattices where basically you can control. You want it to, as I put pressure on top and bottom, it'll implode inside, like the pressure will go inside. Like there's a lot of new things you can do with lattice. So reach out. Assembly updates. So some are kind of small things, some are kind of bigger things. This is brand new performance reporting, which I think is pretty interesting. I've got a lot of customers, or recently a couple customers specifically, that were asking and trying to figure out the best ways to cut down the amount of time it takes to regenerate and make drawings and do all that. What this tool does is it allows you to kind of go in and do a little study, a performance study on your particular assembly, and it'll show you and allow you to dig down to find maybe a troubled part or something that's really slowing down the regeneration process. Very cool, I think. I mean, ultimately, you could have done this on your own back in the day, opening up each part, looking for, hey, giant feature, list, 150 features in a specific part, or copy, things that that are kind of slow. This will kind of help that speed that up really quick, right? There's also a new tool called Flip Tangent, right? So in the past, if you did a tangent constraint, you were kind of stuck with whatever it did, and then you had to kind of figure a way to add another constraint to drive that the way you wanted it, right? Where in this case, you can put the tangent and you can flip from one side to the other, right? Multi-body support and shrink wrap feature. shrink wrap option to collect bodies from reference assemblies and a part. Copy all bodies from the source part. And again, this is just to kind of clean up the difference between multi-body and assemblies, or catching them up. Doing a enclosure, so that you can do an enclosed volume, but you can also do it optimized now, meaning that align would be X, Y, and Z, and then optimize would find the smallest box that can fit the whole thing. So that's kind of brand new. I'll show you what that is. So if you've not used the enclosed volume, it's in 11, it's under surface enclosed volume. If you can't find it, go to the command search, find it there. The performance report, which we're going to get back to, is under investigate, tools, investigate, performance report. I'll run one of them. All right, so let's go ahead, take a look here. So the first one we're going to do is the enclosure. So I have a part here. Doesn't look a whole lot different, but basically you can go cut surface, surface, enclosure volume, and and you can build a volume. And in that process, you can do a couple things, right? So you can build a parameter off of that to get the volume, but we can also go in there and say, hey, instead of aligned, we can say optimize, and we'll see that shift a little bit, and we'll also see our numbers change. Right? And the same thing, I could build the parameter. So that's enclosed volume and the ability to optimize that to get to the smallest box. I've got another version of Creo running here with a bigger assembly. I didn't want to sit here and watch it all day, so not all day, but 6 minutes. And we're going to go into that performance report. So investigate, tools, investigate, performance report. And then we're going to hit compute. It's going to take a little bit because it's going to go through and regenerate all these. Like I said, this is come in handy, and it's kind of to the point, if even if you're not running Creo 11, if you're running like Creo 8 or Creo 9, and you have some big giant assemblies, you're wondering what's going on, it might not be a bad thing just to download Creo 11, get it running as a test bed, and use it for this one performance update, just to get some of that information. It can be very helpful. Now, obviously, you don't want to save these if you're not going to use Creo 11, because once, like every version over the last, so many years, or forever, as far as I know, if you save it in Creo 11, you can only open it in Creo 11. So be very careful. But, used wisely and smartly, you could download a version just for this one particular thing to get some of that. There's one more thing in assemblies I'll go back to once this is done. We should have just used the wheel off of that one, but it doesn't show. This is really good because it's going to allow me to kind of find some of the deeper problem parts. I probably should have just taken screenshots. When I was first doing it, it didn't seem that bad. Now that I'm sitting here watching the clock spin, it's driving me crazy. All right, well, we're going to let that run. We'll come back to it. I'm just going to minimize it or bring up the other version just to show the other part of the assembly that I wanted to talk about, if it'll let me here. Okay. So what's cool, like I said, what's cool about that is it starts to break down the amount of time each one of these takes. If we dig down looking for those components, we can see that there's one of the big problems right here. So if I go in and pick that, highlight it in the tree, then I can go and I can open it separate. I can look at a flat list of that. I can expand that list. I can do a bunch of different stuff. I can save it off. It's giving me a static, so then I can go back and, hey, what if I fix that component and do a little better job? So it definitely has some great information inside of it. Right, and we can filter by, hey, I only want to see the assemblies, I only want to see the parts, I want to see it by feature, but that's performance report. You can export that out as well. And then the last thing I wanted to show here was just that in the family tables, they've done some work. So if we go Tools, Family Tables, and we can see that, let's just add, let's add a dimension here. They did a couple things. They did, one of the things that always kind of aggravated me was I'll go to put a new number in here and I'll go 120 and I want to hit enter. And as soon as I hit enter, I automatically get this extra table. And I might not have wanted that. So I have to go back and I got to go and delete that row. There's a new tool that allows you to, in settings, which settings is brand new, I can say, hey, I want to not allow auto progress. Do not add rows. So this way, when I type in 135 and hit enter, you can see that I don't get that extra row. And that's again silly, but it's one of those nice things where you can do that. You can always, if we have more of these, 122, 123. We can also, let's bring that over here. So there were 3 options up there. One was, let me go back to that. One was auto progress, add new row, don't add no, and no auto progress at all. Do not change the active cell when pressing enter, right? So what it allows you to do though is this one allows me to the next. So if I had another row here, we could see that if I typed in 125 and hit enter, it allows me to move down the row until I run out of rows. And then it won't go any further, or I can say don't do anything, right? Just keep that completely. So now when I type in that new number, it doesn't go anywhere when I hit the enter. So that's new. And what else do I want to show there? You can also add in there, you can add system parameters and work with system parameters. And you can sort. Right, so I can sort by ascending or descending, by the row, whatever I want to do there. So just some new functionality inside family tables. Let's go ahead and go back. Switch. All right. So they've done some other things that will come out as you start to use this. Your map keys are not going to be stored inside your config.pro. They will actually create a mapkey.pro file. When you open up your, first time you run Creo 11, unless of course you go in and turn that off, you'll see this little prompt that says map keys are now saved in the dedicated map keys profile instead of the config file. Map keys found in the config file in your home or running directory were ignored, instead loaded from the map keys profile located in user settings. And they're stored in a couple spots, so I'll show that in a second. Creo 10, there was environment map key settings. In Creo 11, it's now under options, so we'll show that. This is where they're located. So there's a couple different, there's going to be administrator map keys and then user map keys. The administrator map keys will be in this one down here, your load directory. Right, so this is Creo 11 loaded, common files, text, that's what it'll be. And then the user ones will be under their settings on the document settings or app data, roaming PTC. So that's where your cache and all that stuff is saved for Windchill. This is also going to be where your UI file is for your custom UI. And it's going to be a Map Keys Pro for the user. All right, so let's just see where that is. So the first one is file options now for, oops, without actually selecting, just file options. Here's your map key settings. And then the load directories, right? So if you lost and you can't find them, let me know. I'll give you a direct access to them. Creo 11.0 is the latest version. Like I said, we probably would say wait to July to get, at least to 0.1. never a huge fan of using that first build code. I use it all the time, obviously, to kind of get a start, get a jump on things. But always be careful about moving to that latest and greatest just to move up. Once you start saving stuff in these Creo 11, you can't go back. That's just a delivery dates. So July and then quarter 4 will be 11/02. Something everybody should know. This is something I do all the time. So I would recommend this wholeheartedly. Every time you load Creo, so if we'll bring over Windows Explorer here, C drive, PTC, we can see I have a bunch of different versions, which is never a great thing. It always leads to possible problems. But down inside here, there is a help folder. And inside that, there'll be a reference. There we go. There'll be a what's new.pdf. So every version, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, has this what's new. And I like this what's new. This is kind of where I kind of dig out all the stuff that I'm going. It breaks down, what's going on in assembly, what's in composite, what's harness, generative, model analysis, right? Part modeling. So that's kind of where I got a lot of that information that I was, that we did. So I actually will go in and I'll take this one step further. And in my webinar directory, I actually have a folder called What's New. And then inside that, I have all of the What's New files. So 5, 6, 7, 8, you can see. And I'll just keep adding to that as the new ones come out and just keep track of it. Even if you're not going to, you're going to jump from Creo 7 to Creo 9 or Creo 7 to Creo 10, you can download the software, install it, and pull that what's new out of there. So if you're going from 7 to 8, you can say what's going on in 7 or 8, and kind of work your way up. And it's an easy way to kind of figure that out. Obviously, YouTube is another great example for finding that information. It can be a little sporadic sometimes, but you usually can do a pretty good job of finding that. Let's go back over slideshow, switch. So that's where to find that help file. Like I said, I not even the help file. That's what the what's new file is. The help itself is pretty good. I'll show that in a second. This is just a windshield compatibility roadmap. So Creo 11, you're going to need to be on 12.1.2 for windshield for compatibility. Obviously in 13, it's going to be planned and going on forward from there, right? Again, I found that off the PTC website. If you go in and look for Creo parametric, compatibility roadmap. I also look at things like, is it, compliant or compatible with version Windows 10 and Windows 11, right? What is it for the servers? What version of Chrome or IE, right? So they've gone to Chrome. The Java. I'm using Amazon Creo now for everything, but it should be 17. All right. The help stuff, like I said, if you open up help, obviously there's PTC help for everything. This is great. This is just kind of built in. It can either go out to online. So this is going to support.com. You can actually load that internal, but you can go in here and do things like helical sweep. And then dig in, like, how do I make a helical sweep, right? And it'll walk you through. There's tutorials in here, Creo tutorials. So there's enough help out there. You gotta get used to going and finding it, right? Reach out to us anytime you have. If you've got learning, you can have, PTC learning, e-learning. I don't know if I have mine set up. I probably don't, but that's okay. The help is right there. That what's new PDF is right there. Anytime you want to reach out to us, we'll try to spend a little bit more time with you guys. And that's really what I had prepared for today. We're about 5 minutes. I don't know that we have any questions that I can answer. I have to be in the chat here. Let me look real quick. Somebody wrote abort. I guess when I was doing that performance, it was close. I almost gave up. All right. I appreciate everybody's time today. Like I said, there'll be a part 2 to this as well for the, what's new inside of GD&T, what's new inside of Simulate Live, what's new inside of all the different little add-ons to Creo, right? As always, before you go and jump into a new version, test it. If you got toolkit applications, make sure you're testing those as well. It's like everything. It's new software. So I hope this has been helpful. I appreciate everybody's time. Part 2 is July 24th. So next month on the 24th, and we'll pick it up there. Thanks.